We got Eric Scopel on the line from Duck Territory on 247 Sports to break down Oregon football, of course, coming off a Washington State win 38-24, not quite as close as the score would indicate. To your point, Eric, Oregon jumps out 14-0, play some pretty good football. Anthony Brown really a factor in the running game. And you had mentioned in your previous answer that you believe Oregon's playing a little bit better football during this win streak since the Stanford game. How so do you see them coming together?
Defensively, it starts there. Both the Washington and the Washington State game, even the Colorado and UCLA games, if you really dig into the numbers, there's just not been a lot of success, period, for any opposing offenses consistently against this defense right now. The scores that they have given up have largely been aided by offensive turnovers. You look at that Washington game. Washington had one dry ball game more than 27 yards, and it came at the end in the fourth quarter when the game was largely decided. Washington State scores 10 second half points, but 3 come off a very controversial call, which I'm sure your listeners or those maybe they're not familiar, but they should be litigated. The fact that ESPN didn't bring enough cameras to the game to really give a fair review of what was an Oregon touchdown that was pretty clearly a touchdown on the field. I had photographers at the game who had pretty good evidence that was like it was across the plane, ruled it wasn't. And because they couldn't review it, Washington State takes it down to about midfield and scores a couple plays later. And then Washington State scores a touchdown with 9 seconds remaining against Oregon's second and third team defense to make it a 2-score game. I mean, that's just 2 examples of it. The Colorado game, Oregon's offense scored. I mean, if we're just talking about, the reason these games are closer, Colorado's also scored 2 touchdowns against Oregon's second and third team defense late in that game after Oregon went up. I think it was 31 points. So there are instances here where I think Oregon's defense is not being given enough credit for what it is. And then offensively, this run game has really found its stride. 300 yards the last 2 weeks, 250 the week before that against Colorado. And that was a Colorado game where Oregon probably could have run for 300 yards if they'd wanted to, but they threw for 300 in Anthony Brown's best game. I think what has come together the most impressively here on the offense is Travis Dye's emergence, is just being a consistent running back. It's not really a role he's been asked to play in the past because CJ Verdell's been there. He's kind of been, I guess, the lightning to CJ's thunder. And now he's having to provide kind of his own thunder a little bit and playing at a high level. Byron Cardwell, a freshman, has really stepped up the last 3 weeks, had a couple games around or over 100 yards. And then Anthony Brown as a runner, I think it's maybe lost in the shuffle how effective he can be on the ground. Ran for over 120 yards in the win against Washington State, was very, very effective as well on the ground against UCLA, had a 40-yard touchdown there. So I think offensively, Oregon does not throw the ball in a way that people are going to get excited by, but they do so much running it that I almost feel like the run success at this point is almost independent of the opposition.
Got Eric Scopel on the line from Duck Territory. Please like the video, share these videos out on social media. You enjoy them, others will as well. So share the videos out there and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. Check out Eric's work on Duck Territory 247 Sports. Get locked in as we head down the home stretch toward the Pac-12 championship game and beyond. Johnny Johnson's been part of this program forever, and he's been a consistent contributor, caught 3 passes last week, but his status is clearly out for this game against Utah.
Mark Cristobal will suggest they're hopeful he'll play. I will tell you now he won't. Yeah. He's dealing with a significant injury. They don't really talk injuries from a competitive advantage perspective. I know what his injury is, and it's not an injury that allows him to play again in a while, and certainly not this week.
And then in addition to that, Mycah Pittman, 12 catches this year, not necessarily a go-to option, but much was expected of him a few years ago when he came into the program that he was going to be a bigger contributor than he has been, but he has opted for the transfer portal.
Bizarre, honestly, Mark. I understand frustration over not being involved in the offense to your liking. He didn't have any targets against Washington State. He's had more receiver snaps than any player on this team. He was the team's punt returner, a pretty involved part of the offense. I know he didn't get a lot of targets or catches, as your numbers suggest, but this is a player who's a veteran guy on a team that is a couple of weeks away from winning a 3rd straight conference championship, people think. and maybe playing a college football playoff, I don't necessarily I don't want to fault anybody for deciding to make a decision they think is their own best interest. This to me felt bizarre. And even as it was coming together over the weekend, seeing some of the things he and his dad tweeted, and seeing kind of what we're hearing behind the scenes, it was sort of surreal that somebody would decide to pull themselves out of a season at this juncture with what's on the line, given the role you're in. Because again, Johnny Johnson III, who is a player who's maybe taking some reps from him, as I said, Pittman still gets more than anyone else, is out. Your role is going to expand, and this is a weird time to kind of jump ship, but it is what it is. He made the decision he made. Mario Cristobal didn't have a whole lot to say other than we wish him well and we don't judge.
Yeah, it is difficult to judge. We don't know the ins and outs, and we don't know exactly what's going on beyond the playing field, but bizarre, as you mentioned, and also on the surface, it appears selfish because you play out the string, and if you're needed, that's great. It's an opportunity for you. If it's not, you've still been in the program for a few years. You're playing with what many football players like to term a brotherhood, and you're playing for a goal, not just playing out the string of a season even, but playing for a major goal. Just seems, bizarre.